Well, good morning, friends. It's great to be with you again this morning. I'm Pastor Wolf. For those who haven't seen me around, we're from the city of George. We've been looking at some soul food, some really special verses that we've been sharing as pastors from the different sites. And here's a question that leads us to the verse that I've chosen for us for today. In fact, two verses. But the question is, how would you rate your spiritual life right now, today, on a scale of 1 to 10? Obviously, the low side would mean there's some issues to look at, and on the high side, you're feeling and walking close to God, and everything is great. But if you've given yourself a rotten score, how do you think would you aim to fix it? Would you try harder, be nicer, check your attitude, even do some more volunteering at Father's house? Well, as I said, today's verses tell us, well, that just won't cut it. We can do everything we possibly can, but that may not necessarily draw us closer to God. In fact, it may pull us further back. I want to read from Romans chapter 12 and verses 1 and 2. I'm sure you know these wonderful and especially challenging verses. A living sacrifice to God is the heading. I'm reading from the New Living Translation. It's a beautiful translation. Apostle Paul writes and says, "And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all that He has done for you. Let them be a living and a holy sacrifice, the kind He will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship Him. But don't copy," this is verse 2, "don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the very way that you think. Then you'll be able to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect." Aren't those great verses? Romans 12, 1 and 2. So here's the question that we should be asking. Not how I can do better and feel closer to God, but how do I rather respond to God's goodness? And that'll get us back on track and walking closer with God. Number one, just 2 points to remember today: by giving God my all. Paul talks about offering my very body. That's all of me, every part of me, my Monday through Sunday, my family, my every area of my life, my finances, the good times, the bad times. I lay it on the altar. Problem with a living sacrifice, of course, it keeps crawling off the altar. The Lord tie me down there. But the motivation for my response is the mercy of God. And the Apostle Paul's taken 11 chapters. You read that at your leisure sometime to bring us to this point. In fact, it ends with this beautiful doxology at the end of chapter 11. But he's saying, because of God's goodness, we obey Him. His goodness and grace in the gospel that He's given to us through His Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, and His self-sacrifice. I can't help but think of Abraham when God told to murder his own son Isaac, the son of the covenant. But he was willing to do that. Why? Because he knew and trusted the goodness and the mercy of God. You can read about that in Genesis 22. I can't help but think of that young boy Isaac. They prepared the altar. It's all ready. And he looks up at Daddy and says, "Daddy, the fire's ready, but where's the lamb?" Wow, that is a test of my closeness to God, isn't it? So the question is, what does it mean to put oneself on the altar? Paul says this is my only reasonable or acceptable worship or service. That word in the original is used interchangeably. That says the only way I can serve God and be drawn closer to Him. So today's challenge from these verses is to you, to me, what is most precious to us that we need to give over to God that we haven't put on the altar? And then, of course, secondly, what is the evidence of my submission? It's simply this: a changed life, a transformed life. This is the bottom line challenge, friends. I love J.B. Phillips' translation of verse 2 of Romans 12. He says, "Don't let the world around you squeeze you into its own mold, but rather let God remold your minds from within." The result will be that you'll experience authentic worship in spirit and in truth. as God demands. And you'll begin to discover God's will for your life. Like those good plans we spoke about last week from Jeremiah 29. You begin to reveal that to you as you start serving Him again from a grateful heart, even as you walk in obedience to His will. Well, that's it for today, folks. God has given us His best. Everything we need for salvation in His Son, the Lord Jesus. The ultimate sacrifice. And our only valid response can be, all of me on the altar, until I can truly say, I will not offer anything that costs me nothing. I'll be praying for you. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.